How you folks doing? James Klim here up at my digital studio. This is episode 2 with John Riley from Amplify 360. He's a brand development coach and he has coached for 30 years. And I'll link our first video below. You have to watch that one, but this one's going to be very interesting because we're going to get a little more intimate in our conversation and it's going to be great. John, you're here again. Thank you for coming on board. I have a question from someone who watched the last episode, and they said there was a section in the video where you talked about the 3 circles, right? So you have your clinical skills, you have your internal office culture development, and then you have your overall brand package, which is what Amplify 360 really helps you to develop. Did I get that right?
Absolutely.
The question that this viewer had was more about what does it take within an office to develop a culture? Let's say that they're a PPO-driven office and maybe the new patients go into the hygiene office or facility first. What's a cultural shift? Because I have my ideas and I can share what I do, but I want to hear what you have to say.
This is the big one because a lot of doctors will say, oh, I'm just going to drop PPOs and then continue doing business the same way I've been doing. But that's a problem because what got you here won't get you there. So there's really four core areas of areas as far as what we call really increasing the culture for practice growth. Is it the 4 areas are phone conversion, case acceptance, really focusing on the new patient experience. What's the wow that you're going to leave them with? And then ultimately having the entire team focus on the doctor's clinical skills. So I'll touch base on all 4 of those during this call, but those are the 4 areas that oftentimes are missed and doctors just don't do anything different and expect to have the same result as far as able to convert those patients.
That is so true because one of my major transitions, particularly changing that new patient experience and also the verbal skills where everybody has this synergy throughout the office. And also I got away from just memorized lines. I became really real and I communicated from the heart, which took a while. But why don't you touch on the offices that you coach? What are the main cultural shifts that you encourage that they really need to develop to make it work? I want to get into the details on this because I get questions on this all the time.
Absolutely. Well, and when we talk about, I'm going to go backwards for just a quick second. With a PPO patient calling and you have all the PPOs in your practice, excuse me, but almost anybody can schedule an exam and cleaning, right? And it's very easy to do that.
I can do that.
I can do that, right? But what happens is when we change and go from a PPO based practice to now a fee for service practice, that you're no longer tied to any of those insurances. It sounds great. But what happens is now the culture has to change as far as especially starting with the front office. Front office as far as phone conversion, call tracking, call recording, and even this is the part that most doctors are like, oh, I don't ever want to do this, is role playing, right? Role playing is a lost art. It's almost like the blocking and tackling of a football game, right? Is that in order to win the game, you have to block and tackle. In order to win the phone conversion war, we need to understand how good is the front office at role playing, because role playing is the practice. When you get on the phone, that's when everything starts to happen, right? So really understanding what that looks like. We actually say that our top practices, they role play once a month during their team meetings, during their monthly team meetings, right? That's number one. That's going to be the culture, because we're really talking about now, if we're saying a phone conversion is 70 to 85%, is the average practice that has all kinds of PPOs should be converting 85% of their calls. 15% of those calls are never going to be converted into patients because they're state-run plans. The doctor doesn't take Medicaid, Medi-Cal, Medicare, but in California it's Medi-Cal, right? And so all of these different areas that they're no longer taking now, their conversion ratio is actually going to drop down to about 70%. That's the target. Why? Because now that they're not in any of those PPO plans anymore, now they actually have to be very, very sharp in persuasive communication, helping another person make a wise decision that's going to benefit themselves. So having a front office person that's focused on conversion, understanding persuasive communication, because it's not about manipulating. Manipulating is not what
Right.
we want any practice to ever do.
And they'll
But as far
sniff
as,
it. Patients sniff that
oh,
loud and clear.
absolutely. But really, the difference between manipulation and persuasive communication is just a few words.
Hmm.
Persuasive communication is helping another patient make a wise decision that's going to benefit
Exactly.
themselves. Manipulation is getting a patient to make a decision that will benefit yourself,
Yeah.
right? Only a few words difference, but it's a completely opposite outcome. So we never want anybody to manipulate, but in order to be focusing on persuasive communication, they need to be better at persuasive communication. And this is where the doctor really needs to invest. That's number one.
Hmm.
Okay.
But, you know, on that topic, that was something I've gone through a lot of different coaching through the years, and we're in like role playing for me now is everyday life. I'm married to a
Mm-hmm.
therapist who's an incredible communicator, and I think it was this thing of where it's like surfing, where you wipe out, you try again, you wipe out, you try again, and then you get that one wave and you experience what it feels like. Doesn't mean you don't quit wiping out. And what I tell people, particularly in my classes, is you have to speak from the heart and choose your words so they're in the benefit of the patient who is in front of you, because people listen different ways. My favorite appointment, John, and again, I work people through my chair before they ever see a hygienist. My favorite appointment, and I do it, is my new patient exam,
Is a new patient.
because I
Absolutely.
like to connect, and that defines the relationship forever. It's like the first date,
Well,
you know?
you're actually hitting on the second point
Yeah.
is really that new patient experience, right?
Yeah.
That new patient experience has to change when you become 100% fee for service. Why? Is because the culture is now that you're moving away from maybe a I'm just using this as an example, like a
Hmm.
dollar store patient base, to now more of a Nordstrom patient base. It's one that's really wanting to get healthy. They want to follow through on treatment. So
Hmm.
we need to understand how to communicate with them. So the best way is to say, walk through the practice and understand what is that patient experience. I just got back from a Waukesha, Wisconsin, from one of our top
Hmm.
practices. A dear friend of mine, Dr. Matt, is truly top of his class as
Yeah.
far as digital smile design. Truly amazing. But when you walk through his practice, everything is intentional. Why? Because he's competing against PPO doctors,
Hmm.
right? And even though he doesn't, he's no longer in any networks, is that the thing is that you have to understand this very intentional process. The very second someone walks through that door, what are they going to say about you? If you don't know what they're going to say about you, you probably haven't said it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have to understand, it's like, what are they going to say about you? Are they going to talk about the doctor's clinical skill? Are they going to talk about the entire process? When I walked into his practice, on the screen was my name. It says John Riley's personal suite, right? On a big screen TV, right? I felt amazing. I wasn't even getting dentistry done, right? I felt like, well, I'm going to hop in the chair. Let's go do this.
He was moving you through the show years ago, before today's technology, and I still use it though. And it was a major transformation. We used to use Polaroid pictures where we would have the pictures of the mouth. I still do that. It's on a large screen in my office. And when a new patient comes in, just the records they get in the way we do it, and they're prepared for that from the front office. But the other thing that's been incredible for me is integrating technology like a CBCT. Every adult patient gets a CBCT. And when they're done with the appointment, they always leave. They're going, wow, you're a lot more than a mouth doctor. I
So
get that
true.
all the time. And it's about setting a stage. So, and I tell people this, I want them to feel safe and secure in the office, period. If they have that emotion, then we can work in the relationship. Some will integrate soon if they really have a trigger that they want, like a smile, and they came in for that. Some people just want amalgams out of their mouth. I had 2 new clients this week that just wanted good maintenance. And one came in from an office that he felt they were trying to sell him too much. And I said, so how did that make you, maybe I get into this therapy thing, like, how did that make you feel? And do you feel
Right.
that here? And I always tell him, I said, I'm into the heart, man, right here. And
Absolutely.
I'm
Well,
really
you'll always
real
be in
and
that.
authentic. And my whole team is like that. but I'm just mentioning these things because it's a framework. I was speaking to an office a few months ago that was going fee for service, and the first thing I asked the front office is, tell me how you integrate people into your practice. Well, they go right into the hygiene room. And I said, so how much time, and there are good hygienists who can play that role.
Yep.
And we know that maybe if the doctor is not the best suited for that, which happens, that can happen. And I said, okay, so they go in there and then the doctor comes in for about 8 minutes and does his thing. And I said, so what's your follow-up consultation aspects? Oh, we don't do that. Well, you're doing that just like a PPO office, and that can work, but you're going to get different results. And I always stress to people, it's all about the relationship. Relationship becomes before dentistry, because that's how you start setting the stage for trust. And if people don't trust, it's hard to enroll them into what they really want. Because, it's not about me, it's about them. And I always tell people 90% what is learned, just like in speech, is what they see. Right. Well, audio is a really small section of it. But the 90% of what they see has to go with a feeling that registers, I feel safe. Right.
Well, you just nailed on. There's two reasons why someone's going to buy dentistry at any time and all ways. Number one is that you just nailed it, is trust. Right.
Yeah.
If you don't have trust, you're not going to ever sell anything. Right. Because there's no sale that's ever been made unless you elicit an emotional response. That emotional response starts with trust. Right.
Oh, yeah.
That is absolutely vital to the process of engagement as far as helping someone to follow through on treatment. But the other one is urgency. This is where the average practice doesn't really focus on it as much. And so a good example is that we have to think about, if a patient's standing in front of us, do they trust us or do they have urgency? If they don't have either one of them, well, then we need to build both. But the urgency part is very, very sensitive to doing it at the patient's pace, not yours, right?
Yes.
We all want to build case acceptance, right? And that's number 3 that we're going to be talking about. But when we talk about case acceptance, we want case acceptance to grow. Same day dentistry, we want that to happen today. Fortunately, most of the time, it's not at the pace of what the patient is. And so really the third area is so vital, where we actually track the difference between existing patients and your new patients as far as what is the level of case acceptance between the two of those. Why do we track it that way?
Yeah.
Because if you don't track it that way, and I'm speaking to you, doctor, wherever you're at and whatever software you have, if you don't understand what the difference is as far as case acceptance between your new patients and existing patients, you could be losing a lot by how you're by that new patient experience, like you were talking about, James, that if they don't have that new patient experience, and you're not building enough trust, and we're focusing on the key word where most doctors do, education, right? All we want to do is educate. It's almost like if they haven't started treatment yet, I'm going to educate them even more.
Yeah.
That's a problem, because here's why, is that when it comes to case acceptance, it's all about this element of, does the patient feel valued? Does the patient feel heard? Right? Does the patient feel respected? Okay. Those 3 things are absolutely vital in that new patient visit. And when we talk about building case acceptance, they may not accept treatment that first day. Most don't. Okay. But we want to make sure that they're coming back. Right. So part of that tracking is that it has to do with, is there enough trust for them to come back? Or do they feel like they heard you, right? They got a big treatment plan, right? But there's no trust there.
Yeah.
And there's not enough what I'll call social proof. Other people have done it, so can we. So if we have a 55-year-old, 65-year-old patient in front of you, they're not wanting to be educated about the treatment. Now, they have to be educated about the treatment. Doctor, don't stop doing that, okay? But don't lean on that so much when it comes to treatment planning for a new patient. Because why? They don't know you like the other patients that have been there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? Know you yet, right? So we have to understand how to really build that. That trust is so important. But how to do it is build the fact as far as social proof. Other people have done it, so can I. Talk about other cases. You can't give them the full name, of course, unless the patient has released that. but give them, say, hey, I just had a patient just last week, exactly like you, Joe, that came
Yeah.
in that had your exact situation from 2.5 hours away. And man, he's so grateful for that
Yeah.
travel because it's literally changing his life. And I
Yeah.
can't wait to help you do this exact same thing. Okay. That's social proof. So then the average patient that you're really wanting, especially when we go fee for service, we're not here to do a bunch of cleanings and exams. That's not why you got into dentistry, doctor. But the big thing is that if we can start to really build that trust on that initial visit and start to focus on case acceptance, it's not going to be because you educate them. It's because you understand them,
Yeah.
you respect them, you're on time for your appointment. If that 55 to 65-year-old patient is sitting in the front office or a reception area for an extra 10, 15, 20 minutes, there's no respect there in their mind,
Yeah.
right? That's right.
Totally. And that's what they get. I always tell people now that with the shift in healthcare and dentistry, there's no better time to go independent from insurance because the contrast is going to be greater and greater and greater and greater. It's just the fear factor. Well, this is powerful stuff, John, because it takes me back to when I used to wear double knitted pants, and I was in my 20s and 30s, and I did my best at each stage of the game. But I remember after going through a certain coaching enterprise, I had one patient goes, "You sound just like a used car salesperson." And I
That's
knew
crazy.
I wasn't there yet. But, through the years, if I could step back and start again with what I know now, it's about authenticity and being
Hmm.
really true in here. And you just have to repeat it every day. I wanted to ask another question with this branding approach. So you're branding this culture, right? So that's how you 360 Amplify 360 does this marketing. What I found when I went fee for service is I didn't need as many new patients a month because eventually the type of clientele that walks Field of Dreams, that walks into your office, they're coming for a different reason. Why don't you hit on that in a moment? And then I have another question for you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, you're hitting on the fact that when a doctor has PPOs, there's a great equation to be able to figure out how many new patients they actually need for the size of their practice. For every $100,000 you collect in a year, you need 2.5 to 3 new patients per month for every 100,000. So on $1 million practice, you need 25 to 30. That's more of a PPO practice.
Mm-hmm.
But just like you said, is that now if you're doing more dentistry per patient, you can slow down. You don't need as many new
Mm-hmm.
patients. You might need 2 to 2.5, or where you're at, James, is 1.5 to 2 new patients per $100,000 you collect. Why? And you might even get down to 1. Why is that? Because you're doing more revenue per patient. You're getting the patient healthier. You can slow down and do more
Mm-hmm.
dentistry that day, right? So that's absolutely critical in that process. So it's all about the difference between a PPO practice and a fee-for-service practice. It's one thing. It's ideal patients, right? If you don't have those ideal patients, you desperately need ideal patients. You need to replace the patients that drop out. Remember on the last one, I said
Yeah.
15 to 30%.
Yeah.
15 to 30% of the patients may leave, and that's we don't guarantee that because it's all about your goodwill, doctor. But the average practice is losing 15 to 30% of patients, not in collections.
Yeah.
If the doctor is to do it with us, we've never had a doctor drop in collections ever if they follow our system because it's a step-by-step system.
And I think
But
that's the thinking that we want to convey today is that when you go into this cultural shift, and that's what I wanted to touch on because I had a question about that. And I can tell you right now, most doctors want that type of environment. I don't run from room to room. In fact, when I go into hygiene, talking about that social proof, many of these patients are with you for a while. I'm going to use two power words right now. We've been monitoring, we never watch anything, right? And now it's the time for an upgrade. I use that word all the time.
love
And
it.
I just this week I went in, patient's been in my practice for almost 20 years, and a hygienist pointed something out, and I said, "Well, it's time for an upgrade there. We'll get that on the schedule when you leave. What I'm going to do is make a new enamel coating for that tooth, and we're
Mm.
going to reinforce it again. So hopefully, I don't have to touch it for years." And the patient goes, "Okay,"
So good.
and I'm out of
So
there.
good.
And so the language changes, and that's what I tell people is like I used to over explain things, and I love working on engineers, accountants, and attorneys
Hmm.
because
I love it.
they just want the facts in and out.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
the opposite. I attract people like me too who could talk all day, but
Well, you're actually nailing it, because the fourth area that I brought up at the beginning of the call is the fourth area is really talking about the doctor's clinical skill. So why do I say that? Is because it's all about the facts.
yeah,
Like, I'll give you a good example. I mean, you're a Coyce follower, right? You love John
oh yeah,
Coyce, right?
I
This is
one of the
just an
top in the
example,
world, top in the
right?
world.
I believe that as well. But here's the thing. If a doctor goes to John Coyce, there's 10 courses a year on average. 10 courses a year. There's 29 doctors per course. There's
Hmm.
23 actual attendees. There's 6 of those are mentors. So out of each course, there's 230 doctors that are going through the curriculum to graduate the Coyce Center, and then you can become a mentor or an instructor. But just as the beginning phase, as far as graduating, that's a huge accomplishment. So there's only 230 doctors a year that get invited to this level of course. So when I talk about the fourth area that the average doctor and team need to focus on is talking about the doctor's clinical skill. It's all about the facts. Is that if patients don't understand who the doctor is in front of them,
Hmm.
clinic, then what do they have to compare you
Yeah,
against? Price, right? So
exactly.
I'll give you a quick example. If let's say if I was your assistant or hygienist or front office person, and I was meeting Sally was walking me. Let's say I'm an
Hmm.
assistant, and I'm walking her back to your chair, and I would say, Sally, have you heard about Dr. Klim's course that he just graduated with at the Coyce Institute? She's like, no, what does that mean? It's like, well, the reason why I bring it up is you're here for a second opinion on a beautiful anterior veneer case, correct? She goes, yes, I am. It's like, well, the reason why I bring that up is because he's only one of 230 doctors in the entire country, or for the world for that matter, that have graduated this year now let's say you graduated this year from the Coyce Institute, that have graduated this year from the prestigious Coyce Institute in downtown Seattle.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
reason why it matters to you is because he could be practicing anywhere in the entire country for that matter, but he's chosen to raise his wonderful family
Yeah,
right here in a great town. I can't wait for you to meet him in just a few minutes,
that's
right?
beautiful.
That's the level of communication about the doctor's clinical skill.
Hmm.
Doctor, you're not hearing that in your practice. You need to hear that, right? You need
Yeah.
to hear it from the team. And it's not about bragging or boasting or saying, you're the best in the world. We can't say those laudatory statements, but what we can do is give them facts, just like you said, James.
Wow. Thank you. I think the viewers now are starting to get a feel for what we meant by that circle, which talks about office culture, because
Mm.
that's the transformation that needs to happen. And I tell you, I've spent a lifetime doing that in my practice. Last thought here before we go. Thanks for your time, John. In today's market, I see dentists that want to acquire multiple practices. It's kind of the way of building their
Mhm.
portfolio. And the question I would pose today, is it possible to take this concept you're talking about and add that to multiple offices? It's
Mhm.
probably going to be a lot tougher, though, because I really think that could be a niche if doctors understood it right.
Mm. Yes. Well, it's tougher for the first one, just for the first one. Or why? Because if you don't have that culture, it's going to be very hard to be duplicatable, scalable,
Mm-hmm.
durable, right? You're just not going to have it. But if you get it right on the first one, then you can copy it. It's exactly what we do. Like, we started with a practice out of Texas that had one location. Now they've taken the system. Now they are 32 locations. She is not building a conglomerate to where she's just building this fast-paced practice. Each of those 32 locations run as a fee-for-service,
Wow.
very much of a boutique practice, but it's scalable and durable because she started with one, right? So that's what I'd say is that you have to have the right model starting with the first one, then it's
Mm-hmm.
duplicatable all over. Just like it's easy to once you understand CAD CAM technology or whatever it is that you're doing clinically, you do it right in the first one, then you can duplicate it, in all the other practices, but you have to get it right on the first one.
Well, we could talk a lot longer. And I like to talk.
You
John,
too.
last time we did this, you were willing to give your cell phone address with one condition if you wanted to follow up. John is a pro. He's been doing this for 30 years. He doesn't look that old, but I color
Maybe
my
so.
hair to keep myself looking younger. I know you don't. I wasn't implying that. But
No, you're good.
having
You're good.
said that, I know you got a call from the last one we did, but you definitely want to have the URL
I've got
of.
multiple actually.
So you want the website address. You want to give your number that right now, and I'll put it on the screen afterwards.
You bet. You bet. So yeah, the two things, Doc, if you want to talk this further, you're not going to get a hard sales pitch or anything like that. I'm all about education. I'm at the level of my career that I just want to help to educate. So
Yeah.
number one is just give me your name, text me your name and your website so I know exactly where you're located. And then my cell number is simply 541-206-3732. I love to be reachable, approachable. You can text me at any time. Both my kids are gone now. They both got married within the last year and a half. So I'm at a different phase than most of you, and I'm happy to help at any time. And just shoot me a text, and we can set up a time to talk.
John, thank you so much for the conversation today. The culture of dentistry is about work-life balance, and your advice and expertise really touched on that today. Even though I've been practicing for 40 years, I still learn something new every week in practice because life is a development. It's like a marriage. Just had a hygienist retire who's been with me almost my whole career, and that was like, I'm lonely, but I have some good replacements, and they're never the same, but they're different. And when you have a good culture, you'll attract good people who want to work with you in your practice. And I found that to be the case in finding some more hygiene support in my practice. Now it's hard to find them. And I found that the culture that we had was so attractive that we had a problem choosing who we would bring into the practice. But hold on for a moment. I want to tell everyone goodbye. Thanks for being part of this conversation today with us. Even from this side, you can be part of the conversation if you put your comments below, and we will respond accordingly. I want to thank John for being part of the program today. I want to have him back for some other conversations. I thought today was really, really important, and that's about the culture of dentistry. If you want more information on this, there's no one better to talk to than John, and I will post that number below in the notes. Thanks for watching, and you folks take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.